So it was leaked yesterday, a whole list of WWE pay-per-views and network exclusives, bringing back some fan favorites, some old, I'm talking WCW style pay-per-views. And all in all, the list looks pretty legit, and we're going to talk about that. One, because WWE is heading into the brand split again. They haven't not done a brand split in years. When the last one ended, we all cheered and we celebrated the fact that it was coming to an end because, let's be honest, creativity and everything else that was going into the brand split, the previous brand split, things just went way out of control and the show became horrible. Now, last Monday night, and including the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, I was very impressed by the writing, the story, and the lack of filler. Now, there was one or two filler matches, but for the most part, WWE did a really good job. Now, let's say you have a talent pool of 50 to 75 people. If on Monday Night Raw, you're only able to get at least a quarter of them on TV and you break up the shows, you should now at least be able to get about half of them on each show, guaranteed every week unless something else is going on. And you want to make your TV time or reserve your TV time, not just to throw the fan favorites on the show, but to actually include the people that you're going to do storylines with. So, the network exclusives, the pay-per-view schedule for 2016 was as follows. The Royal Rumble pay-per-view, WWE Fastlane, WrestleMania, Payback, Extreme Rules, and Money in the Bank. Those are the pay-per-views that we've already had. Coming up, they would have WWE Battleground, which we already know is in a couple weeks, SummerSlam, and then this is where we get into the string of newer pay-per-views or reorganized pay-per-view events. So, after SummerSlam, we would have WWE Backlash, which would be a network exclusive taking place on 9/11/2016 from Richmond, Virginia. Now, this show is a Raw. If you look at the shows that are Raw and SmackDown, the very first one is SmackDown. SummerSlam would be Raw and SmackDown, both shows. Now, Clash of Champions. After WWE Backlash, it's approximately 3 weeks later. Clash of Champions takes place from Indianapolis, Indiana, and it is a Raw show at the Bankers Life Fieldhouse. Now, if this were true, this is Clash of Champions, this is typical WCW pay-per-view. I was just actually going back a couple weeks ago and watching some old Clash of Champions pay-per-views. So, Clash of Champions coming back. Now, if you remember, October used to have kind of two pay-per-views with Hell in a Cell, and there used to be, one other one, either Bragging Rights or something at the start and the end of the month. Now we're going to be going back to that with about 2 weeks after Clash of Champions, 2, maybe 3 weeks, a SmackDown show will be No Mercy. So it looks like every single month there's going to be a pay-per-view, at least a branded pay-per-view. And now this is all coming after SummerSlam, so it looks like we might see more of the Descent happening after SummerSlam. And then, of course, Hell in a Cell comes up, and that'll be a Raw. It's showing as a Raw pay-per-view. Now, I don't know 100% if this breakdown is legit. There's been some rumors that I think Dave Meltzer and Wrestling Inc. reached out to WWE, and they basically didn't deny it. They just said, well, we evaluate and re-add events. So I definitely think this list is very possible. From SummerSlam to Backlash to Clash of Champions, and then No Mercy. So before the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, about 2.5 weeks to 3 weeks later, in Sacramento, California, for SmackDown would be No Mercy. Following that would be Hell in a Cell, Survivor Series, WWE TLC, and Roadblock. So it looks like the amount of TV time we have between events is kind of shrinking. So in that stint, from SummerSlam to Backlash is about 3 to 4 weeks. Backlash to Clash of Champions is about 2 weeks. Now, if this is a brand split and they really are treating it like shows that are separate, this isn't necessarily the worst thing known to man. I mean, if you are going to have events every so often, it does kind of pit the shows against each other. And especially with the network, there's no real reason why they couldn't do it. Now, it'll be interesting to see if they do those network exclusives as pay-per-views on Sundays. Actually, I didn't even look. Are those Sundays? Are those normal event days that they're filming? So if we look out into about September, so September 25th would be a Sunday for Clash of Champions. So it doesn't look like they would be, a Tuesday just replacing, which would be dumb to basically replace a Raw and a SmackDown taping. So little bit more Sunday action, whether or not those are already live events that they're just kind of turning into network exclusives, or whether they're booking those going forward. After Survivor Series, we have TLC and Roadblock. So Roadblock is getting moved up this year from after the Royal Rumble pay-per-view. I actually personally liked the Roadblock concept last year. It made sense going into WrestleMania, who will hit a roadblock. I think the booking of that made sense. The tagline of the event itself made sense. But Hell in a Cell would be a Raw pay-per-view. Survivor Series would be SmackDown versus Raw, which, Survivor Series, Team Raw versus Team SmackDown, maybe bragging rights, something like that. I would be all for that. WWE TLC, though, is showing as a SmackDown pay-per-view. And then WWE Roadblock is showing as a Raw pay-per-view. So now, the events themselves, the names and everything, they look okay. I personally probably wouldn't go with Backlash. I don't know. I'm not the Backlash pay-per-view itself. If I look at the history of past pay-per-view events, I think you could have put something else in there besides Backlash. But like from SummerSlam, the Backlash from SummerSlam is happening 3 weeks away. I guess that makes sense. Clash of Champions is kind of replacing Night of Champions, so Night of Champions is gone. Instead, this is a Clash of Champions, where Clash of Champions almost seems like it would be cool if you get Raw versus SmackDown, where it isn't necessarily for the titles, but, they are the Clash of the Champions between both shows. I think that would be kind of cool and interesting. But based on this pay-per-view schedule, it does kind of look legit. And I want to know your guys' thoughts and opinions on this list. Is this list something that you think is real? It does look pretty official in WWE, not really wanting to comment on it just yet, saying that events are being added does kind of, light speculation, fuel under the fire, because Clash of Champions name had recently came up, possibly the trademark filing. So I think that this would definitely seem like something that could be legit. And if I'm being honest with you, the only thing that I do worry about with these branded network events is I'm all for Raw and SmackDown having their own separate events. I think that, having the big four is great. I think having the network exclusives where every month it's those guys, it may make it a little bit hard to sustain TV time for some of the shows. Like, let's say you don't have an event. So you have Raw and SmackDown. You compete at SummerSlam. Your next Raw pay-per-view would then be about a month out. So it would still be within a month. You would not be going any farther than that. And then your next pay-per-view, again, is a month out. And then you do have a rushed one about 3 weeks away. So it does look about every 30 days, roughly each company or each, because they're the same company, the same brand, would be getting their own event, with the exception of SmackDown being in Survivor Series time around November. So everybody else would be getting their shows. Now, whether or not the shows stay Raw or SmackDown, I don't have 100% clue about, but I'm all for this list, man. I think that it's good to kind of bring back some other events, especially with the brand split. Are those the specific ones I would have gone with? No Mercy, Backlash, and Clash of Champions? Maybe not. I think Clash of Champions could be an interesting pay-per-view idea, but as far as the other two, Backlash and No Mercy, especially both being SmackDown shows, it's like, okay, you have these big shows that you just re-added, and why Backlash is only a network exclusive versus the other one isn't, that is a little weird to me. Why does one get to be a network exclusive and the other one's just listed as a pay-per-view? Because there's only one that's listed as a network exclusive, and that is, in fact, Backlash. So that's where things could get a little bit hairy, because that is also the one in Richmond, Virginia, without an arena named or listed on this form. Now, if I'm WWE, going into your next WrestleMania season, this would be your first year in 6 plus years that you've actually had a brand split. So it'll be interesting to see who they put on the shows, how they work these events, especially what commentary teams are for them. At dual events, are we going back to old pay-per-views where each announce team will announce their own matches, which I definitely think they should. If I look at the current bank, and let's say they go with the Corey Graves versus more Ronaldo Booth up against like Lawler and Cole and Saxton, or Cole, JBL, Saxton, whether or not they change that up at all. But you could basically flip-flop shows. They definitely should keep the announced teams on them, and they should keep the announced teams focused on the people that they know. Think back to the Taz eras, the Michael Coles, Jim Ross and King, and really kind of separate that out, because those pay-per-views should really definitely feel special and kind of a big deal. Like I said, if they do turn those from the events, the live events that they have, into those network specials, I'm all for it. You know, Elimination Chamber was all right. That was just kind of turned from a live event in Corpus Christi all the way into a pay-per-view event itself. As long as these events just aren't added to, you know, make them pay-per-view-esque network exclusives, I'm all for it. As long as we do get the resolutions from storylines, as long as the storylines actually come about from it, I'm 100% all for it, man, especially when you have a brand split. Giving talent time to really get the showcase and the feature they need. Like, if you're in a feud that's kind of like a C-list or B-list feud, and you have a pay-per-view, which is mainly for A and B-list feuds, you know, you may not see some of those matches on pay-per-view, but those matches may have a little better storyline. So now we're finally going to get to see some of that stuff where, you know, you may not see those big storylines on TV, but now that they have their own network pay-per-views, and it'll be interesting to see how they compete in ratings. It really will, because if you have big feuds, say you have one show is Roman Reigns and you don't like Roman Reigns, and the other show is your favorite guys, Dean Ambrose or Seth Rollins, it'll be interesting to see how the numbers compare, because right now we don't have any WWE Network numbers. So I want to ask you guys, based on literally no information that we have now, coming back to it, if we come back to it in a couple months and we make our early predictions between the Raw and the SmackDown branded pay-per-view schedule events, who would come out on top? Not knowing who's on Raw and SmackDown, would people be more apt to tune into the IWC-friendly, possibly SmackDown talents? Or is Raw still the juggernaut? Let me know in the comment section below. And when we get more information about the brand split, we'll make sure to cover it right here. And until next time, it's your boy Tubby Emu, and we will see you all later.